Hello, I'm Patrick McFarlin for the Air Force Nuke Weapons Center. Today I'm going to talk to you about bullet writing, refining your submissions. A little bit about myself. Like I stated, I am Patrick McFarlin and work at the Air Force Nuke Weapons Center. I'm the innovation consultant there. Get asked all the time, what's the innovation consultant? You've got CPI, now CPI squared. I'm the squared part of CPI. What my passion is helping others. Retired Air Force Chief Master Sergeant, almost 29 years, 9 assignments, 6 deployments, 2 special duties. First one was as a staff sergeant. I was a flight attendant on the Chief of Staff's plane. And several years later, I was a first sergeant for 3 years. As a first sergeant, I got a passion for helping others. And the big part of what we do on helping others is helping people with their bullet writing, be it an OPR, EPR, 1206, quarterly award, annual award, career field award, also leadership awards, for instance, the Lance P. Job. So overview, I want to talk about developing a plan. I want you, starting early, refining that process, lessons learned, and the way forward. So when it comes to developing a plan, the best annual awards do not, and I repeat not, and that's why you can see it capitalized and in red, get written on 24 December, right before you go on leave for the holiday, or the night before the award is due. You need to get your thoughts down and beginning formatting your bullets as soon as possible. But they don't need to be perfect. Why do they not need to be perfect? You've got individuals like myself, Major Bleha, your squadron DO, commander, your senior listed leader, your chief. They're going to help you with these. Have a friend, a mentor, a supervisor look over these bullets and ideas. Your bluff, your bottom line up front here is fight for feedback. Also, the biggest issue I ran into in my first Air Force career is individuals tracking their information throughout the year or quarter. People have to go ahead and they have to track their information. Years ago, I had a young man come to me and he goes, "Chief, I don't have enough bullets for this volunteer of the quarter." I'm like, "Oliver, why don't you come sit down with me? Let's have a discussion here." Oliver ended up winning the wing staff and then the wing volunteer of the quarter. This young man is an A1C, was in charge of finance for the Asian Pacific Heritage Luncheon for the entire installation. He was doing great things, but just didn't know how to write it. So I talked about it earlier, quarterly awards, annual awards, and various other awards like the Lance P. John, the Career Field Award. Being that I'm stationed at Kirtland here, I'm more familiar with the Leo Marquez Award because there's a park here on base named after him. They're similar, however, line space may be different. I can remember when I first came in, we had annual award was front to back, both sides. My favorite bullet I ever saw was, I'll use Airman Snuffy. Airman Snuffy was a regular donor to the Air Force retirement home. Well, every enlisted person is a donor to the Air Force retirement home. That's 50 cents on every pay period. Once every month. Do the math. They put a 1206 bullet for $6 a year. Definitely not EPR worthy or 1206 worthy. So having submitted a quarterly award, like say for the Nuke Weapons Center or AFSA, it makes it a lot, when you put these awards together, it makes it a lot easier to draft an annual or various other awards. Again, like I said on this, fight for feedback. That's extremely important. Start early. So the process of capturing your thoughts, accomplishments, statistics, and other data can be user specific. My wife and I were talking about it this morning on the way back from the gym, the narratives. We're going to narratives next year. That's going to be a drastic change in how the Air Force does business. been associated with the Air Force 30, I'm getting close to 35 years. And what's the one constant in the Air Force? Is change. The narratives, basic bullets, line items for reports, definitely make sure they're unclassified, and any other important details. I can tell you the hardest 1206 or bullet writing class I've ever taught was for OSI over at Capone Air Base in Germany. Because majority of stuff what they do is classified. You can't put it on 1206. The example captures information from 2 quarters. So begin to synthesize the raw data into bullets, your action, impact, result. Every time I teach a class on bullet writing, I'm like, do they have to be in the action, impact, and result format? One thing they taught me at the first Sergeant Academy is the answer is on a situation is it depends. It depends. I can do a 1206, write it up, go to my division chief, he may modify it. It'll go to the director, she may modify it. Goes up to the Air Force Nuke Weapons Center, in my case, they may modify it. Don't stress on small details now, and don't worry about racking and stacking your bullets. Do bullet placements matter? Yes. On all EPRs, they do, or even 1206s. We'll talk about that more later. So once the bullet outline is developed, make note of more specifics that are needed. If you listen to nothing else I say today, numbers, numbers, and more numbers. Why do I mention that? Well, when you put a 100% on any bullet that you're writing, it really doesn't tell me anything. Why does it tell me nothing? What have you done? If you turn in your report every month, you've made 100%. My thought and recommendation on it is, if you're going to put a percent increased, on knowledge, on efficiency. Once your bullets or outline is developed, I want you to make note of more specifics that need to be identified. Reference proper writing guides, acronyms, abbreviations that are approved for use. They matter. I had a conversation with an airman in a bullet writing class, and I'm like, what is ARMS? And she's got, I have 2 of them. Well, I understand that, and that's funny, but to the personnel, it's the automated record management system. My old job in the Air Force, it's the aviation resource management system. To the boom operator flying in the back of the aircraft, passing gas for a living, I think it's funny when I say that. They don't, but it's the air refueling management system. So you definitely have to be careful with your acronyms. Your installation writing guide, when you have awards for your career field, you definitely need to make sure on that award that you have the right headings. I've seen it too many times when you don't award too many bullets. Well, if you have too many bullets, you're not going to get credit for all of them. Never, I repeat, never sell yourself short. It is in the art of selling the bullet that a good writer can make almost anything read amazing. Why do I mention that? I can remember the numbered Air Force Command Chief, 19th Air Force years ago, tell me, Mac, anyone can make the smallest of accomplishments look huge on a 1206. I also recommend you do your homework. That's part of this. Don't write the 1206, the annual award, the medal the night before it's due, or right before you're going to go on leave. Make a plan and a strategy. That starts before the award period. As a supervisor, I would say, hey, Johnny, Joey, Susan, I want to put you in for an award this quarter. You did great last quarter, continue it. Here's the path that I'd like you to go on. I had a young lady yesterday, Master Sergeant, tell me, she goes, Chief, I have a master's. I don't want to get another master's. And I'm like, hey, I'm right there with you, but there are things you can do. Air Force, cool. Go get a certification. The job I have at the Air Force Nuke Weapons Center, I got because of my CPI certification back when we called it Air Force Smart Operations for the 21st century. Know your headings. If you can't get your headings right, that's telling me that there's something specifically wrong, that you're not paying attention, and then you don't care about your airmen. And when I say airmen, I mean all airmen. Know your audience and know the goals of your directorate and Air Force Weapons Center in my case here. But what are your goals if you're sitting in the LRS squadron? What are the goals of the LRS? The Mission Support Group and the Airbase Wing. They matter. So refining the process. I want you to search for previous winning packages. Recently, I sat on a board for the Air Force Weapons Center, and it was a thank you award. What that is once a month, the AFMC commander will say thank you to somebody for doing a great job. When I got the paperwork, we had 6 civilians and 3 military folks that were up for this award. Even with that many award packages, it was easy to rack and stack. The cream always rises to the top. Some organizations have the packages like you can keep them. You'll see in bright red, do not copy and paste other accomplishments. Years ago, I had award packages on my SharePoint page as the MAGCOM functional. Somebody copy and pasted and put somebody else's information on their EPR. When I was told about it by the individual who was the chief at the time, he would not give me a name. I wish he would have, because that person had absolutely no integrity. It gives an outline to enhance bullets, and you can find more interesting adverbs and lead-ins. I tell people don't go corny, QB'd, that kills me. Not everybody's a sports person. Honchoed, another one, not a big fan. But it gives you an idea of what's being looked for. I want you to tell your story. I want you to highlight how one opportunity may have opened other opportunities or functions. Real world example. Late last year, I was told, hey, Patrick, the AFA, because of COVID, we're not going to be able to do it in Florida. So I want you, and I thought I was going to just be an attendee. Well, no, I was asked and given an opportunity to go ahead and put together this function for he was 1-star then, now he's a 2-star commander. But we ended up going to somewhere else on base, all COVID safe, great event, got a nice coin and a time off award for it. Is it about the coin or the time off award? No, it's not. But, I was given the opportunity and good things happen with it. So growth, personal or team, physical size of the team, number of volunteers. I use Ramstein and AFSA as an example because Ramstein, twice a year, they would go out the back gate and they would clean up trash. Well, use Airman Joe Smith as an example. Well, Joe Smith beat the bushes, got 100 volunteers out there, and they're out there for 3 hours. Well, he took 10 to 15 hours to go ahead. Say he took 15 hours to go ahead and put this together. Well, putting in those numbers, you had 100 volunteers / 315 volunteer hours. And say they picked up 500 pounds of trash. Numbers matter. Outreach, involvement with other organizations. I work at the Air Force Nuke Weapons Center, but I'm constantly working with Major Bleha and his folks at the LRS, or I'm working with Mr. Etheridge Hill over at FSS, or even Lieutenant Colonel Greenwood at the 150th Special Operations Wing, the Guard unit on base. Outreach is huge. If you can create something that was the first ever, like Total Force Initiative, TFI, that's phenomenal. Phenomenal for you, phenomenal for your organization. Also, you want the individual. How you and those that you lead became better. Education. If you're tying in your education, tie it into the mission or airman. Why do I mention that? Because GPA is nice, but where's the wow factor? I want to see the wow factor. I had a question in my section about POM. I didn't work with POM active duty. I ended up taking DAU Act 1010, which is a replacement for Acquisition 101. Great course, But my coworker did tell me I was lucky. And why did he tell me I was lucky? Because Act 1010 is about a third the size of Act 101. But if you can tie your missions or the aim of the awarding organization into the Chief of Staff's goals or initiatives, Chief Master of the Air Force goals and initiative, or the organization's goals, in our case, division, directorate, or the Nuke Weapons Center. I mentioned earlier, I'm the innovation consultant for the Nuke Weapons Center. If you don't think I've constantly talked about the Chief of Staff's accelerate, change, or lose, you're wrong. I have. He put out his next document, ABC. Here recently, he put in mid last month, I believe, he put out an innovation letter for airmen. Have I highlighted all these documents when I'm talking innovation or working with individuals on their innovation ideations? Most definitely. So we're refining the process. I mentioned it earlier, bullet placement matters. You know, the serial position effect, the primacy effect. What is the primacy effect? Recall the first thing that you saw or read. The strongest bullet should go on the top of that heading. I think I accidentally did those in reverse. It's the primary effect. Recall the first thing that you read or saw. The strongest bullet goes on the heading. On the recency effect, recall the last thing that you saw or read. It's the second strongest bullet on the bottom. I use these primarily on EPRs, on the front section of the EPR. On the back side of the EPR, it should go from bottom up. Why? Because your strongest bullet, your push line bullet, should be on the bottom. I tell people all the time. Level matters. We'll talk about that in a bit. But the higher level stuff should be on the back of the EPR. 1206. Those bullets matter. The placements of them matter. Numbers, and more numbers. I talked about it earlier. I want you to combine like items, amount of people, members, volunteers, and volunteer hours all combined. I mentioned it earlier, 100 volunteers, 315 volunteer hours. If I look at a bullet and it says, you know, it's an annual award, and I see 3 hours, I use the line from NFL Sunday Morning. Come on, man, really? 3 hours on an annual 1206 or an EPR? No. In Ramstein, I had 2 defenders look at me and go, Chief, why didn't I make senior this year? And I'm like, guys, you have a billion, I repeat, not mil, $1 billion project hidden on the front of your EPR. Why isn't that on the back? Numbers matter. So dollars, the amount of money, and whose money? You know, squadron, group, wing, MAGCOM, Air Force, even DOD. Level matters. If you can get something changed across the Air Force or save the Air Force money or the wing money, that's huge. Time. Well, how much time did you dedicate towards something? How much time did you save? I also ask folks, well, if you saved time, for who? That's part of that level I'll talk about here in a minute. And percentages that increase and decrease, they matter. Percentages matter. Why do I say percentages matter? It's because you're making a difference. You know, if you've increased the knowledge of your section by 10% or 15%, it matters. You know, briefings and or other events, you know, or requirements. To who? The level matters. You know, are you briefing the wing commander? Did General Brown, the Chief of Staff, come in? And you're briefing him? Are you the pro-Joe for General Cotton, the new Global Strike Command? It matters. Talking about level matters. So I want you to highlight impacts, results, based on its level. Is it the division? And this is Nuke Weapons Center. Is it division, directorate, Nuke Weapons Center, MAGCOM, Air Force, DOD? If you're Air Force Sergeants Association, I'm a big proponent of AFSA. You know, when I talk AFSA and I talk division, that's MAGCOM level. Yeah, internationals, Air Force level. The local chapter here, recently because of COVID, their size changed from a large unit to a small unit, but they won international for small units. So they won the Air Force level here at Kirtland, Air Force Y for AFSA. If you're involved in the city, the state, or national, things happen. You know, Hurricane Katrina years ago, that was a big, huge state event. 9/11, national emergency. Levels matter. So milestones. I want you to highlight the accomplishments, events, if they're the first ever. I hit up people every time I look at an EPR. Well, like yesterday, Master Sergeant I was helping. Hey, is this the first ever? Yes, it is. Then write it down. Or it's the first time it's happened in several years. Write it down. You know, if you've taken over a program and it's not good, you know, you highlight if someone is reinvigorated in a significant time frame, 6+ months, annually, multiple years. If your section got an outstanding or an excellent during an inspection, and you can work with your base historian, go back and see when the last time, or if your organization has ever gotten an excellent. On my senior master sergeant EPR going to chief, we got an excellent in our host aviation resource management office, HARM office. The last time we had one was over 13 years. That looks good on a 1206 EPR. It really does. So if you've been asked to take a look at an AFI, Air Force manual, you know, was the guidance document outdated when it was corrected? And if it was so long, or if so, how long? My wife, you know, had a discussion with me yesterday where one of her coworkers was like, hey, yeah, you know, I know it's current, I wrote it. Well, when did you write it? Well, 12 years ago. Again, come on, man. Really, you know, things change drastically in 12 years. So fight for feedback. Most important, one of the most important things you're going to do. I know things are changing. Air Force Times, you know, the whole going to narrative format. No white space on the end of the bullet. That's going to change. Avoid fluffy infos. I talked about it earlier, and they're kind of down at the bottom of this slide. QB'd, honchoed, ramrodded, oversaw. Oversaw tells me nothing. That Master Sergeant I was talking to yesterday, oversaw. Well, her name is Megan. I won't give you a last name, but I'm like, Megan, were you in charge of this? Well, yeah. And it was, you know, all these folks from, you know, 3 or 4 different squadrons were all deploying out of your unit. Well, yeah. Did you lead them? Well, yeah. Okay, then change the oversaw to led. You led those folks. Avoid intros that are too long. With bullets, I see some bullets that the intro of the bullet is more than half the bullet. Well, that kind of like lessens the impact on the back end. Avoid small hours. I talked about it earlier. You know, combine them if you can. You know, annual packages, EPRs, OPRs. If you see something that has 3 hours, 4 hours, not even really worth putting on there. I'm constantly hitting people up on their writing as far as I want to find the wow factor. I'm constantly reading up a bullet that specifically says, yeah, you were just doing your job. Where's that wow factor? I want to look at it and go, holy cow, he or she changed something negative into a positive. Using a real world example, years ago as a young staff sergeant, I put in a suggestion. It went nowhere. The wing functional, basically, he put it in a drawer. A few years later, as a first sergeant, I put in the suggestion again. So now in my old career field, we have the Sergeant Miller D. Campbell Team Award. I'm a Cobalt Towers bombing survivor. D was the only buck sergeant or sergeant that was killed at Cobalt Towers. But now we have an annual award named after D that's Air Force wide that recognizes this young man who was killed in action at Cobalt Towers. So make sure you tie your degree into your airman or mission. As I mentioned earlier, if you don't want to get a degree, get a green belt, get a black belt, become a master black belt, CPI. You know, when I first got hired at the Nuke Weapons Center, I was asked to go to the Innovation Improvement Consultant Workshop. Go to a workshop, AFWorks. There's so many things that out there that you can go to get your knowledge, and not only yours, but your sections, your division, your directorate, your squadron, group, wing. I've been fortunate in my previous career where I've been able to go to help certify a class. I got handpicked by the MAGCOM functional to do that. Stuff like that matters. Who did you get picked by to do it? Squadron commander, group commander, wing commander, your installation command chief, stuff like that matters. Avoid statement intros like legislative newsletter. That tells me nothing. Be clear as possible. You have to be clear. Avoid being too generic. I see it all the time, too generic. More specifics. I'm constantly writing it on people's 1206s or EPRs. Be as specific as possible. I mentioned it earlier, highlight any partnerships. You're working with another wing, several wings, MAGCOM, Air Force, it matters. Are you being benchmarked? And who are you being benchmarked by? Creating this innovation fusion cell, I've had lots of help from lots of people. There is no I in team, but it was awesome that during our inspection by RIG, the innovation section was highlighted as a strength. Why was it highlighted as a strength? It was because of the partnerships. Creating this innovation fusion cell from scratch, I reached out to several people, and these partnerships were very, very helpful. But I also returned the favor, by sharing a point of contact listing or our SharePoint page. Spell check. There's a reason it is all caps. Spell check that. Your bullets. You have to. The package. If you can't spell stuff right, it's not going to look good on you or your leadership when it goes forward. Be original. Duplicate bullets on an annual package. I had a young man here over in the mission support group when I taught a bullet writing class earlier this week say, well, yeah, Chief, they put the same bullets from last year. Well, that's not right. That's a lazy supervisor. That's unacceptable. You need to talk to that supervisor. If he or she is not listening, you need to start going up the chain. Said it numerous times, avoid corny, which is QB'd, honchoed, ramrodded, oversaw. Avoid specific AFSC jargon. I mentioned it earlier, arms. So lessons learned. Verify and double check the suspense dates. If the packages are late, they may not compete. Years ago, I was a senior master sergeant stationed here at Kirtland, and the MAGCOM functional went off. He was mad. He's like, folks, you guys can't, this is an annual award for the team award, and you guys can't submit it on time. I'm like, Chief, can you please go ahead and take a look at your email? We submitted on time. So we were the only wing in AETC that submitted on time. Well, by default, we won the MAGCOM level award. What was really cool out of that is we ended up getting a letter from a senator here in the state because it's the first time we had won a MAGCOM level award like that. You also need to verify where and how these final drafts need to be submitted. To an org box, to a personal email, even by snail mail. Sometimes things have to be submitted by snail mail. So I want you to verify if other documents may be required or read for the solicitation. Official photos, yes, the Air Force has gotten away from that. I can remember when I first came in, individuals going for their major board who had mustaches, big bushy mustaches, and they had to shave them off for the major board. I know that's went away many years ago, but if there's a photo that needs to be done, make sure you have it in there. If you need to have a bio, make sure it's in there. If you have to have a matrix, also put it in there. I mentioned starting early. Start drafting as early as possible. If it's an annual award, when's the annual award due? Is it calendar year or is it fiscal year? My old AFSC, they went from calendar to fiscal. It matters. But what's nice about going from the fiscal to the annual is the person's been killing it, been just jobbing, doing phenomenal things for the base, for the squadron, group, wing. it makes that annual award for the wing package a lot easier if you've got a career for one that was done at 2 months earlier. Fight for feedback. I mentioned it earlier. Senior leaders, division, directorate, Air Force Nuke Weapons Center in my case, they'll help. They want to see the personnel be successful. How do people make the top 3 ranks on the enlisted side? It's sustained superior performance. It is. If I'm looking at 4 different individuals and 2 of the 4 have awards throughout their career for them and the folks that work for them, that's saying something. If I see no awards, and I'm not saying people have to win awards to get promoted. What I'm saying is it's sustained superior performance. In today's Air Force, you make senior, you can't just, hey, you stop and, hey, I made senior and pump the brakes. You need to keep bringing it. You represent your senior leaders at the higher levels of competition. And it matters. I've seen wing commanders, walk up with their airmen at a worldwide conference, and when they've won a big award, commander's proud, the airman's proud. It's just a phenomenal feeling. I mentioned it earlier. I'll write it up. It'll go to my division chief. He'll change it. Go to my director. She'll change it. Even when it goes up to the Nuke Weapons Center, the front office, they're probably going to change it too. Also, if you need to get feedback from outside sources, my former command chief hits me up and says, Mac, writing's your thing. Can you take a look at this EPR for somebody or this 1206 for somebody? Get that outside perspective. Also, verify that it's readable outside of the AFSC or the organization. If you're putting LRS, vehicle transportation, and I can't understand it, I'm not saying dumbing it down, but definitely what I'm saying is you need to work with some folks outside of what you do, understand what you do. Do I think the Air Force has gotten smart when they're going to go to the narrative format? I do. I think it's going to be a good thing. Because sometimes when you read stuff, it is hard to read. Plus, let's talk about it where if you're competing with, say, a maintenance superintendent, he or she has 300 or 400 people working for them and $1 billion in an aircraft. And me I'll just use myself as an example. Say I'm a personnelist working in the FSS, and I have 3 people working for me as a senior. Kind of hard to compete, but it's not, because it depends on what you do. How many people on the base are you supporting? There's thousands and thousands. How many reports have you touched? But have those folks from the outside of the organization take a look and say, hey, does this, give me a sanity check on this. How's this? So way forward, what path do you want to take? It depends. Do you want to be successful? Do you want your folks to be successful? It takes work. It's not done overnight. Do you need some support or help or advice? Do you need guidance or assistance from somebody else? What path do you want to take? I go for the success. I've thoroughly enjoyed in my Air Force career, my first Air Force career, and now my second Air Force career as a civilian, seeing people be successful, seeing them win awards or getting medals. I got a call recently from an airman, and she's now got a mass sergeant. She's a mass sergeant select, but I can remember she was a senior airman when I met her. And a few boards she's met in her Air Force career, like, hey, you got a commendation medal as a senior airman. How'd you do that? She was just killing it on the job and deserving of the award, the medal that she got. Think about the path and the way forward, which direction you'd like to take. What I like to refer to is the questions is the happy slide. So I'm on the Air Force Global. My name is Patrick McFarlin. It's McFarlin.3@us.af.mil. If you have a question on the EPR 1206, I'm gladly here to help. I mentioned it earlier, our SharePoint page for the Nuke Weapons Center. kind of phenomenal working with teams and working with other organizations. When our SharePoint site went live, and we've continuously updated it, what was cool out of this is the MAGCOM used our SharePoint page as the benchmark for theirs when they created their own. Why do I mention this? Stuff like that matters. Could that be put on a bullet? Yeah, most definitely. Benchmarked by the MAGCOM or benchmarked by the squadron. But again, any questions? Here to help. Also reach out to others. Reach out to that senior master sergeant that you highly respect, that lieutenant colonel that, you met him when he's the captain, now he's a squadron commander. The group commander, you met her as a second lieutenant. It happens. The longer you've been in, the more folks you met or have worked with. Like I said, I had the pleasure of working for General Brown when he was a 2-star over at USAFE, and just a phenomenal individual. And he gets it, and he's about the people. So be out there for your people. Thank you. Appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to speak today. Have a good day.